Hello, everybody. My name is Surjan, and welcome to the first episode of Game Dev is Not Easy. For the first episode, I have my good friend and the developer of Chasing Static, Hollowbody, and many others, Nath here. Hello, Nate.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, all things considered, pretty good. Thank you.
Welcome to the Game Dev is Not Easy, and thank you for being here for the first episode. I'm really glad that you accepted my invite. Nath, so these days you are working on finishing Hollowbody, and I hope that the development is going well. How's it going?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's definitely taken longer than I expected. I mean, that normally happens with games, but this one's been even longer than like I was kind of cautious with how long I expected it to take a while, but it's taken even longer. Anyway, it's good. Yeah, finally like finishing up final bits, polishing off things that have been like a little bit unfinished for the whole of development, and adding a few things that I didn't expect to have time to add. So yeah, it's good in general.
That's great to hear. I am looking forward to Hollowbody. I really enjoyed its demo, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are also excited to see it because this is sort of going to be the first ever PlayStation 2 revival in the horror genre because as you know, we have been getting so many like PlayStation 1 horror games, that PlayStation 1 style horror games, and I believe people are now expecting to see more PlayStation 2 horror games. And I can comfortably say that you are the leading name in that right now. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, first, thank you. That's cool. It's cool to hear. Yeah, I mean, most of my favorite horror games are on PS2. And like, as I really love the aesthetic of PS1 stuff, especially like the sort of developments we've seen in it with the indie scene, sort of pushing the technical limitations a bit further while still keeping to the core of what made those games have that visual style. But yeah, I didn't see many attempts at PS2 style. I think it's quite a tricky style to go for because you're in danger of looking like a low budget AAA attempt if you're not careful. You really have to lean into like find a PS2 game with a distinct style that you like and really try to push it from every angle. But yeah, it's cool to think. I'm sure there must be some other people working on similar
I
style
hope so.
ones. But if I'm at the, if I'm leading that charge, and that's great because I want to play those games. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun art style to work with. Really enjoyable.
Well, that's great to hear. I'm glad that you are enjoying and you have a history of, enjoying playing these games. I am also an enjoyer of PlayStation 2 style, and just like you said, it is a more tricky style to, I think, get through because when you look at PlayStation 1, it is you can kind of describe what the style is like wibbly wobbly graphics, pixels, this, that. But when it comes to PlayStation 2, it is really, I found like difficult and really hard to explain what makes it PlayStation 2.
Yeah, I
I,
mean,
yeah.
there was a huge variety of games, I think, and art styles on that console. So yeah, it's kind of hard to nail down exactly what gives you that vibe, what takes you back to that.
Yeah, like you said, it is just a whole vibe. Well, without diving deeper into Hollowbody for now, at least, could you tell the listeners a bit about yourself? Like, how did you first start developing video games? What is your like education background? Did you take any education for this? How did you start?
I'll try to keep it fairly brief, but I took an interest in making games in my early teens. I've always been like really into art and drawing and stuff. I used to paint a lot of Warhammer when I was really young. I sort of make up my own rules for Warhammer and stuff. And that kind of carried over to like tinkering on PC. Well, we had like a really old Mac at the time with some old art applications on it, like Kid Pics and loads of like really retro stuff. And then early teens, I got into there was a forum and web community around making adventure games called Adventure Game Studio, which is still going to this day. My first commercial game, Guard Duty, was made in Adventure Game Studio. But yeah, I was tinkering with that through my teens, and then got into like music and stuff in my mid to late teens. Got in some bands and things, and was still occasionally tinkering. But like with game dev, you really have to commit to it. It's quite hard to have other hobbies and be successful in game dev. So yeah, it was a bit on and off for that point. And then yeah, good. Needed to like focus on a career sort of towards my late teens, early 20s. Had a bit of a rough like background, family stuff. Yeah, had a bit of a crappy childhood, and that like yeah, I won't go into it, but yeah, it wasn't great. Good parents and everything, but yeah, yeah, they're not with me anymore. But yeah, so like I needed a job basically. It got to sort of my late teens, and I had inherited my family home. But with that came like paying for all the bills for a house, like council tax and energy bills and stuff. And like I just come out of college, I was just a kid messing about, so I needed a job. And I thought didn't really do too well at school and stuff. I was good at like art stuff and quite into computers, so I thought maybe I can like pursue sort of graphic design. Picked up a little bit of work here and there for graphic design. Went into IT support. Did that for a while. All the meantime was wanting to make games, but like it felt like such a pipe dream to be able to work on a video game and actually have a steady income back then. Yeah, so I was like basically trying to make ends meet, and then went to uni. Not a great uni, but I went to university and studied digital media, which a lot of that was film production, but there was also some like graphic designy elements to that. And yeah, freelanced film production for a while. Worked with some cool people making videos and stuff. But yeah, the whole way through all of this, I was kind of still tinkering in the background with the idea of doing game dev stuff. And ultimately, in my sort of mid 20s, I had a fairly stable job at that point. I was doing all right. And I managed to cut my hours down to 4 days a week rather than five. So I wasn't working full time. So I had like one day a week and weekends and evenings to work on game dev. And I'd been working on this Project Guard Duty adventure game for sort of about 5 years at that point. Just like I say, alongside everything else, when it came around to after work in the evenings, I was tinkering on it, and I just decided I wanted to do it. I wasn't creatively, I wasn't happy, and that's like a big factor into what like keeps me happy is this like making sure I'm creatively fulfilled. So yeah, I dropped my hours at work, and then spent the next sort of couple of years saving as much as I could, and then eventually quit the job and supported myself for the last year of development on guard duty. Shipped that, yeah, and then like it carries on. But yeah, I shipped that game. It did okay. It wasn't like an amazing seller or anything, but it kind of proved that I could ship a game. And then I managed to get some publisher interest for Chasing Static, which was in super early stages at the point. And they gave me some development funding, which helped me through the development of Chasing Static, released that, made some more money. That helped fund Hollowbody. And then, yeah, here we are today, basically.
Wow. Wow.
That wasn't brief. I'm sorry. I tried to
No,
make
no,
it
no.
brief and then just
It was pretty brief.
waffle.
Like you managed to tell that story in like 5 minutes, and there's so many things there. So you were a fresh graduate, and you were by yourself,
Yeah.
and you started developing a game while working full hours, and you maybe worked on this game for maybe 20 hours a week, or is that too low?
I mean, yeah, probably a bit more than that, but I mean, so it takes a while to like get into work in
Yeah.
the evenings and stuff, so you find yourself procrastinating a while.
Mm-hmm.
But probably like maybe 20 hours of like really solid development.
Okay. Okay, I understand. So there at one point you said that you quit work and you focused on your game development and you supported yourself. If it's not too deep, could you give us a bit more details on that? Because I believe a lot of developers aren't happy with their daily jobs and they want to work more on their games, but I don't think that they have a way of doing that. They're kind of afraid how are they going to support themselves. Can you like give a little more detail on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I'm always a bit cautious when giving advice about that stuff. I don't think, especially if you're making your first game, I really don't think you should quit your job. In my case, so as I mentioned, I inherited my family home. So at this point, I was working full time. I didn't have a mortgage on the house. Like I was just having to pay house bills. So there's actually quite a lot of money each month that was coming in that I was able to put into savings. I wasn't going out. All of my sort of annual leave or holiday leave at work was going into taking time off to work on the game. I wasn't, going abroad on holidays or anything. So I was like saving money because I knew deep down that I needed to do this thing. I needed to do this creative endeavor more and needed to take it more seriously. So there was a motivation there for a couple of years of just setting money aside until I knew I had enough funds in the bank to cover kind of like bills and living expenses for about a year. But when I quit the job, I actually the home that I owned, I actually leased it out and had some tenants come in and live there. And then I moved into my friend's spare bedroom, which was like a really, really small spare bedroom. Like I'm talking a single bed and then a tiny little space next to the bed, enough to fit a computer chair, which couldn't move. So it's like a real boxy room. But yeah, I moved into there for like really cheap rent. And therefore, where I was leasing out my old house, that money was kind of paying for my living expenses in this tiny room and made my savings stretch a bit longer. So yeah, like I say, it was quite a unique situation for me, and I know like most people don't have that sort of luxury to be able to do stuff like that. But I just think, in regards to advice, I don't think quitting your job is the right thing to do until you sort of shipped something and you know that you can ship a game. I think lowering your hours is actually quite a good approach if you can afford to do that. Sort of look at what outgoings you've got, look at where you're spending money. You don't necessarily need to be spending money, and talk to your employer. See maybe if you can shift your hours. Maybe like you work more hours, 4 days a week, so that like on Friday you can leave at lunchtime or something. That you get a whole afternoon on Friday. Yeah, there's like a balance there between self care and like keeping your social life up and stuff, and also doing what you love and balancing your work. So it's very different for different people. But
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And thank you for actually saying that. Like, advice wouldn't work for, can, sometimes it doesn't work for everyone. Everyone has different lives. And as someone who also is actively working on a full time job and is trying to create stuff, I agree. Do not quit your job
yeah,
until you have like a really good plan, a concrete plan that you're sure that it's gonna work. But that's interesting to hear. So you basically adopted a minimalist lifestyle in order to chase this creative endeavor, and I'm glad that
yeah.
it really worked out for you. Were you always kind of like this minimalist person, or starting a game development journey sort of like pushed you this way?
I mean, yeah, I've always been a bit of an introvert. So I think like many game developers, all I sort of need to keep me occupied is like a computer and that I can work on and like, mess about in Photoshop, or back in the day it'd be like a Adobe Flash and stuff like that. So short of, buying games and every now and then upgrading a computer, there wasn't a lot of spending on luxuries and stuff like that. So yeah, I was always kind of lived fairly minimalist. Like I say, I had some bad luck when I was a teenager with family stuff, so I sort of had to support myself for a period of time there, which kind of chucked me in the deep end when it comes to sort of living off of very little money. So I sort of got used to that, and then carried that on.
Yeah, I know how that is. Well, I'm glad things worked out for you, man. So you didn't have any education in game development, is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't have any really. I did some IT, like a generic IT course at college, which covered a very small amount of programming at one for like a couple of hours a week, and the rest was sort of like networking and spreadsheets and boring computer stuff.
I gotta say, it is really rare to hear an indie developer with no like game development education or having worked in like a high profile gaming company. You were all self-taught and you managed to create really, I believe, like successful games. I think that is really impressive, and I would like to congratulate you on that again. I think Chasing Static was your first successful, like commercially successful game, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, thanks, man. Yeah, so Chasing Static was the first one that kind of seemed to really make a big splash. Guard Duty was the game before that. There's actually a much longer game than Chasing Static in regards to playtime and development time as well. But it was sort of like a fantasy adventure game. But yeah, Chasing Static was the first one that kind of seemed to get a bit of buzz around it, which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully Hollowbody is going to be even better. So I want to jump on a slightly different question. When you look back at your game development history, Guard Duty or Chasing Static or currently Hollowbody, was there ever a moment where you wanted to give up and do something else? Just give up game development altogether.
I've kind of thought about that because like I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff recently where people say, they got to a point in the development where they were considering just quitting game development and just sacking it. And I've never gotten to that point. I think the problem that I've always had, and I think a lot of new game developers have as well, is you get to a point in your project where it stops being fun. The first 6 months, year of development is exciting. It's all new ideas. It's all testing yourself, seeing if you can implement cool features and designing enemies and locations and stuff. But there always comes a point where you've got to make the game, and it starts to feel like work. And it's really easy to sort of get ideas and inspirations for other game ideas at that point and think, oh, actually, this idea is a bit more marketable, or this idea is going to be way cooler, and like jump on something else. And then you're just starting the cycle over again. There's always that temptation there. And the only reason why I managed to get to where I am today is because I shipped Guard Duty. Like, I talked about how I was into Adventure Game Studio in my early teenage years. I actually announced that game, I think, when I was like 16 or 17, and then didn't ship it until, 5 years ago? So, yeah, 2019 was when it finally shipped. And just for reference, I was born in '88, so when I was 16 was like, yeah, early 2000s. So that game was like an idea in my head for almost 20 years, 15 years. And it wasn't until I forced myself to actually finish it and stop like trying out other ideas. I did a few jam games as well, which is kind of helpful, but I like told myself I have to ship that game before I can work on another big project. And that sort of, yeah, that really helped me. So like whenever I'm thinking, I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking, I don't enjoy this anymore, I want to work on something else, I just instantly like try to switch my brain over and say, look, you can't work on something else until you finish this. And I find that really helps to like see a project through to completion.
Yeah, you kind of, from what I understand, you kind of just pushed yourself, and it worked for you, and that's interesting to hear because for some people it's like they want to work on other things, like sort of to take a break so they can refocus, come back and refocus on this. But for you, it was the opposite. You just pushed on it
Yeah.
and just forced yourself, and it worked out. So for game developers who are thinking of giving up, what would you give as, not, I don't like saying advice, but what would you tell them to, show them the way? What should they do if forcing themselves is not working?
It's sometimes helpful to sort of revisit whatever it was that inspired you to get started in that project. Or so say you're working on, I don't know, you're making a platformer, and you got to the point where you think, oh, I don't really want to work on this anymore. I'm not enjoying this, whatever reason. for look back to whatever it was that inspired you to start that project. Like for me, a lot of projects come about from playing another game and thinking, "Oh, this is really cool." I like I'll get to a certain point in the game and it makes me feel a certain way. I think, I really like that feeling. I like how that unfolded within the game. So I generally go back and like play that game again. Like obviously with Hollowbody stuff, it's stuff like Silent Hill and Kuon, Rule of Rose, games like that. So I've sort of I've played through the Silent Hill series or like the good ones twice since I've been working on Hollowbody, and that helps me refocus a bit. And I don't think there's any shame in like taking a break if if you're physically tired or mentally tired. That's cool. The project's not going anywhere. Just try not to like get ideas of working on a different game project without finishing the previous one. Even if it's just shipping it, putting it on itch.io, and just like not really polishing it, just making sure it's out there and getting a little bit of feedback. That's probably one of the most important skills in game development is actually shipping. It really is a hard hurdle to get past to actually let people play it, put it out in the wild, do the final touches to make it playable. So yeah, I genuinely suggest like if the project's feeling too big, scope it down, cut everything you can. Maybe you just release it as like a proof of concept or a demo or a playable teaser, but yeah, just try to focus on whatever it is the thing you're working on. Try to remember what got you inspired for that at the start, and do everything you can to ship that without you changing your mind and working on something else.
Yeah, revisiting what inspired you definitely it makes sense, and I think it makes sense for every art medium, right? It makes sense for art, it makes sense for literature, music, and it makes sense for gaming all the same. Whatever inspired you should maybe go check them out and see why. I remember why you're doing this.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And so similar question, is there anything that you remember regretting during game development for any of your games? Like you still remember, oh man, I regret this. I wish I could have. I wish I could have done that differently. I wish I hadn't done this. Is there anything like that that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think stuff like I really like to when I announce a game, I like to try and make a big impact with it. I put a lot of effort into sort of the first reveal trailer and the sort of press release or like the Steam description and stuff around that. And you can sometimes sort of lock yourself into a certain direction with the game by doing that, or trap yourself in a corner. So there was a point in Hollowbody's development where I just thought, I should never have announced this game as having combat. I was just like, this having combat in this game is just way too ambitious. Like previously, I just made sort of narrative puzzle games, and yeah, there's multiple times during the development where I just thought if I just not mentioned combat and just focused on the story stuff, maybe I could have got away with not having it. But thankfully, like it's at the point now where the combat is like I feel it's nicely polished. I'm really happy with it. There's no more sort of broken animations and dodgy collisions and stuff. So I have managed to get there in the end with it. But a lot of the struggles in this project have revolved around that sort of real time aspect of having combat and what that the knock on effect that has on a game with having those scripts constantly running in real time and enemies being able to interrupt interactions and stuff like that. It's a lot to take on.
But I'm glad that it worked because yeah, when I played the Hollow Body demo, I was impressed with the combat because you don't see combat a lot in indie development for the reasons that you just mentioned. They're hard to do, they're hard to implement into the game, and to see that Hollow Body has it, and Hollow Body seems to have a lot of combat, at least in the demo, it was like that. It's really impressive that it really works well. I'm glad that it worked out and it's not really a regret anymore.
Yeah, that's good. I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, hopefully, hopefully I'll be able to pull it off for the final release. But
Yeah.
people seem to enjoy the demo, so that was a good confidence boost.
So, in the previous topic, at one point you said something about a game being marketable. So I think this is a topic that a lot of game developers are focusing on these days, especially these days, because you see a lot of small horror games just coming out, selling thousands and maybe millions of copies, and then just being forgotten in a few days. They're like trendy games, right? So
Mm.
I think this pushed people to make more quote unquote marketable games rather than doing what they like. So how would you say people should go for a balance there? What should the balance be? Should it be more marketable? Should it be more of your creative side? How did you manage to have that balance in your project?
Yeah. So I think there's kind of a bitter truth with marketing, something you can't really avoid, and that is that for something to be marketable, with like modern social media and stuff, it needs to look nice. It's very hard to market something that isn't visually appealing, especially when most of exposure for games and stuff is based around people scrolling through Twitter or Reddit or whatever it may be, or watching YouTube roundups. It's all visuals are a really important part of that, and like there's a lot of developers out there that are fantastic programmers but don't necessarily have the sort of critical eye for visuals, and typically they will hire an artist later down the line. But the way that games are generally made or funded is, you make a sort of proof of concept, and then you pitch that out to people, and or you make a proof of concept and you put it out on the internet and have a Steam page and stuff and try and gather wish lists. But without that sort of visual style, that visual marketability, it can be quite tricky. So that initial phase where you're trying to find funding to be able to pay for an artist, really you need some sort of nice artwork in there to start with. So I think, yeah, marketability is obviously hugely important. I think people should steer away from chasing trends. Like, obviously, you've got trends in horror, like mascot horror has been quite big over the last sort of couple of years. Don't make a mascot horror game just because you see other games selling, because by the time you finish your game, that trend will be long gone. Like you got games like Choo Choo Charles, which did incredibly well. It had an amazing hook that was just like really, really. It was a visual hook. It was a creepy spider train that chases you. It's perfect for Twitch streamers. It's perfect for TikTok, and you can sort of sell that idea in a few seconds just with a small video clip. I think that game is a great example of how to sort of come up with an idea that isn't going to break the bank budget wise, but has a huge marketable hook. But then again, I don't think people should start making games where trains chase them, because that's been done. And by the time you finish your game, there'll probably be 5 other games that are trying to do that as well. So I mean, I'm not an expert at all, but the way I approach it is generally to make something that appeals to my tastes, make something that if I saw, I would think, yeah, I want to check that out. I'm a very visual person. Like if a game looks cool, even if like the mechanics and stuff aren't something I would usually play, I'll check it out just because I want to experience the visuals and explore the world and stuff. But yeah, so far the thing that's worked for me is basically just making games that I would like to play. And as far as like the gameplay design and concepts and stuff, I try to look back at another game that I like, and sort of use that as a template to an extent for the mechanics. Chasing Static was basically Firewatch but horror set in Wales with some puzzles. And then like, yeah, Hollowbody, it's Silent Hill but sci-fi and British, and less of the culty sort of stuff. Yeah, I guess that's my approach anyway.
Okay, I understand. And then so that was a good point that just said like when game developers see a trend and they want to make a similar game in the same tone, by the time they finish their game, the trend is usually gone. Like I don't see many mascot horror games these days. If I do, it's usually from the already established series, either like
Yeah,
Five Nights at Freddy's or the other one. What was it? Poppy Playtime. Yeah, that's the one.
yeah,
And some others. And speaking of trends, these days, I'm pretty sure you have also noticed. I think the current trend is to make hyper realistic Unreal games taking place in foresty
yeah.
environments. What do you think about that trend?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's not for me. Right. So the problem with hyperrealism, and it's always been the problem, is like it's outdated really quickly. What looks like state of the art visuals now won't look state of the art in 5 years' time. But beyond that, there's a lack of art direction there, and art direction is the thing that holds a game, like makes a game stand the test of time. I think there's some quite cool concepts when it comes to like photorealistic horror. I've seen some ideas that they're cool ideas, but it generally breaks down when it comes to stuff like having character interactions and characters in there because you can get assets for trees and rocks and buildings and stuff that look real. But as soon as you put a character in, there's like so many aspects of animation that come with characters. And then when you, as soon as you've got a photo real character, like the slightest mistake in the animation and it just breaks the illusion. You're in Uncanny Valley, or you can tell that this is a character that's being animated in a video game. Whereas if you sort of lean into a stylize your game visuals, then you can kind of avoid those issues to an extent. You don't need as high fidelity animation. You don't like in my case, PS2 style. Silent Hill 3 had fantastic character models and amazing animations and really great facial animations. But you can also like what I do in Hollowbody is I don't zoom in really close on the characters' faces. So like they're always being viewed from kind of a wide, long shot, and therefore I don't have to put as much work into the facial animation. But like the higher the fidelity, the more areas there are that you can trip up. Like you might be able to get a pre-made level, but to actually ship that as something that's worthwhile and can stand on its own, I don't know. It's a bit cheap. I think a lot of people are using it as like a quick kind of attempt at getting wish lists and cash grab. Like there were obviously, I won't say the name, but there was one recently that had quite a lot of hype behind it. That actually, it was ripping off a lot of PT and other sort of Silent Hill stuff. But like it just got slammed when it released because it's just so much easier to see like where they've glued together bits of assets and photoreal scans and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I use loads of assets in Hollowbody. I use like a lot of stuff from the Unity asset store, but then like I'll retexture it or like I'll remodel parts of it, and then it's the way it's laid out in an environment, it's sort of fits in with everything else. But it's harder to do that with photorealism, I think.
Yeah, really good point with the art direction too. I believe a lot of people are just skipping art direction and focusing on making the games look good and make them hyper realistic because unfortunately that gives the most publicity these days. I think
Yeah.
we every once in a while we get games like Lethal Company, and then they're like an anomaly in bigger horror audiences. I guess that's a good way to call it because when you see big creators or people outside the horror bubble talk about a horror game, it's usually a hyper realistic like body cam horror game type of thing, and it is unfortunate, but it's kind of what the trend is, I guess, and hopefully game developers will try their will find their own way instead of trying to create something around this trend. They can still create around this trend and make it unique, but hopefully this will lead more into art direction, an art direction approach for them
Yeah,
to make their game look unique.
I feel that there's nothing against sort of these games that are doing a photorealistic art style, but I feel like that can't be the only thing that is getting attention for your game. You have to have something else equally as good or impressive to like complement it because if the only reason why people are talking about your game is the art style, it's going to release and it's no one's going to buy it because it's well they're going to buy it and then they're going to refund it. You know, it's not going to have the substance there. So yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it
I
needs a good
understand.
hook.
Yeah. So it's kind of a similar topic. I definitely connected. Speaking of trends and marketing, I noticed that you are self-publishing Hollowbody this time, different from Chasing Static. Is there like a specific reason that you can share with us?
Um, yeah, well, this kind of it's a funny area really. I've had quite a lot of conversations with publishers over the last couple of years. Some like really some publishers I actually respect have like you know made offers and stuff. But personally, I've got this far through development through like my own funding, and also we here in the UK we have a fund called the UK Games Fund, which is probably like the only good thing our government do. But yeah, they actually do fund like art game projects. So I got some funding from them along with the Kickstarter money that I did for Hollowbody. So I've managed to see like the 2.5 years of development through entirely from funding that I've raised myself and sort of some of my own income from previous games and stuff. And then yeah, I feel like I've been enjoying doing the marketing myself. I think I've done fairly well with marketing this game. Like I've seen some really great articles and stuff from websites. Some big streamers and YouTubers and stuff played the demo. And I kind of just want to give self-publishing a go for this one. I think I have, yeah, like I say, I've like seriously considered some offers from publishers that have been very tempting. But for the PC launch, at least, yeah, I think deep down it's quite important for me to self-publish it and to have that ownership over the game entirely, and then I can like make decisions from that point onwards for like how I want the future of the game to be, whether I want to license it out for porting or you know merchandise and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know how the well the game's going to do. It's like wish list wise, it's looking pretty good at the moment, better than any of my previous games. So yeah, I'm kind of yeah holding out for the moment.
Well, kind of related on that topic, since you are self publishing the game, you are also doing your marketing yourself. I know marketing is a really difficult topic for a lot of game developers to understand, but I noticed that you're doing a pretty good job marketing your own game. Could you give maybe some tips and tricks to game developers on how to market their games? Like, what did you aim to do with this project? What was in your like checklist? I should do this to market this game. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, when I first came up with the idea, I was kind of in the back of my head. I was trying to think of like a hook, a marketing hook, I suppose. Like Chasing Static, I was really happy with the marketing hook with that. It was like you know, a slow walking sim horror game, but with this sonic exploration where you'd sort of point a microphone and listen to the old like flashbacks or whispers of the dead. And that was kind of the hook. And it was quite obvious to see that in videos because you'd see the microphone pop up. And then with Hollowbody, it was partially it was playing off of the fact that we don't really see classic PS2 style survival horror games anymore. So I guess a big part of the marketing hook for that was like I wanted to show people that it had like the fixed cameras, it had the art style, which is trying to kind of replicate those PS2 Silent Hill games. But yeah, I think a lot of people with marketing or game developers with marketing, they'll sort of put out a post or two on Reddit or Twitter. It won't necessarily do that great, and then they don't try again. And it's you do have to like be really consistent with it because not all of your posts are gonna hit well. Different platforms have sort of different tastes, so to speak. Like Reddit, for a while, the thing on Reddit was saying, "I quit my job and worked on a game for 5 years, and it's finally out on Steam," and that would like instantly get loads of upvotes. That seemed to be the way to do it on there, which has changed since. But it's generally you want to like be quite consistent on a platform, try a bunch of different approaches to posts, see what works. For Twitter, I've always found that like really casual posts seem to work better rather than like corporate feeling ones. Like generally when I post on Twitter, I'm just like not really thinking about it too much. I put a GIF up or some screenshots up and write a tiny little thing. Generally, don't spell check it or anything, but yeah, there's certain things. I mean, Twitter, you don't really want to put a link in your first post. You want to put it in a comment. Most people know that now, but it seems to suppress posts with links to external sites, which is kind of stupid. But you know, there's a bit of an idiot running that site these
Oh
days.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, oh man, yeah, he's kind of that was like my whole marketing place, Twitter, and it's like on fire at the moment. It's so depressing. Um, Yeah, I don't know. I most of my contacts for marketing and stuff are people I've met through Twitter or maybe through email that they've reached out to me. I think yeah, maybe having a website's actually quite a good one. Like you, websites seem less important these days, but I get like a lot of like at least an email or two a day from random people, whether they're like people who played my games or they're someone who's finished college and they're looking for a job, or it's like someone trying to get me to pay for their outsourcing services. But I get quite a lot of traffic from my inbox just through my website. And I think having that like as a stable sort of cornerstone of your marketing that's always going to be there, you have control over it. And the longer your website's up, the better it gets ranked on Google search ranks and stuff. So people are more likely to see it. That's good. But yeah, with socials, just sort of keep posting. Don't lose faith and like keep trying different things until something sticks and you think, oh, that tweet did like 5 times the amount of likes than my last one. So I'm going to try and do another one along that style. And you get there eventually. It's just, yeah, it's a long game. It's
Yeah.
tiring.
Yeah, and that's why I said I noticed your marketing is doing pretty well because I agree you got to be consistent, and I noticed that when you're more casual in your tone of voice, you just get more engagement, and I see that you are doing that. You are both consistent and casual, and I'm glad that it's working because it's a trend that I am also supporting, and I also see that that's working, and I'm always trying to give advice to developers when they ask. Just tell them to be more casual. Don't worry about making a cinematic trailer or something. Just post development updates. People should know that there is a human working behind this project. I think that always helps, especially in indie development.
Yeah, man. I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Moving forward, like that human side,
Yeah,
that's going to become more and more important.
yeah.
Yeah, just
Especially these days when you see like AI developments. I'm pretty sure you are not a fan of that either. And we are gonna
yeah,
need more humane connections, I believe, behind projects.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's more and more value in that as every day passes, I think, and more value in sort of stepping away from that kind of corporate mentality to marketing, which used to be the way to do it. Like sort of 5, 10 years ago, it was like make sure you appear professional online, make sure all your photos are nicely edited and your profile's really tidy. But now it's like, look, just be yourself.
Yeah,
You know, make friends, show your weaknesses and vulnerabilities because yeah, that's what makes us human, and
yeah,
that's what's important at the end of the day.
yeah. That's how you create connections. Exactly. Well, slowly closing remarks. I just want to ask, what are some of your favorite games to play these days? What inspires you? Is a better question, I guess.
Um, all sorts of stuff, really. I'm starting to realize that narrative is like kind of one of the most important things in games to me. I used to think it was just because I liked adventure games, like point and click adventure games, like Monkey Island, Broken Sword, stuff like that. But even in, you know, I'm playing Final Fantasy Rebirth at the moment, and I just maybe because I'm busy with game dev as well, but I just don't have the time for all the kind of filler like fetch questy side quest stuff. But I'm absolutely loving like all of the mainline story and the characters and like you know the gang dynamic and stuff. Um, yeah, I played Homebody. That's a game that I played like last year, I think, whenever it came out. Not Hollowbody, by the way, Homebody. Um, and that was just like it stuck with me. It was really cool. It's like it's all set in this one house, and it's like a time loop puzzle. There's loads of really cool puzzles in it, and that was great. That was really inspiring, actually. I think that might have inspired a bit beyond this game, and maybe might influence future games. I love Kentucky Route Zero. It's quite an old, well, not old, but an older indie game now. But I still find myself going back to that just because I really like the sort of the world and the writing in that one. Norco is a game I played recently that I really enjoyed. Alan Wake 2 was great. Um, kind of, I feel like Alan Wake 2 was really good, but also I kind of feel like it hit its stride like about a third of the way through, and then it was really hard to top that moment.
Yeah.
If people who've played it probably know what moment I'm on about.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd also like revisiting old PlayStation 2 games. Not not like just PlayStation 2 games, but that console's got a huge library of stuff. It's got quite a lot of good stuff in it. I was replaying Beyond Good and Evil recently, which is a really cool game. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. It's hard to name them all off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's so much good stuff out there.
And are there any other mediums that you like closely follow these days or inspire you, like reading or movies?
Yeah, I mostly like when I find the time reading wise, it's generally like graphic novels is where I go to, probably because they're a bit shorter than actual books. Book wise, I enjoy Terry Pratchett. I really like his Discworld books, but yeah, graphic novels recently. Let me check. I got one. I got a name of one that was really cool. Monica. Sorry, I'm rustling about here.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a graphic novel called Monica that I read over the Christmas break that was super cool, really interesting. So I recommend people check that out. And I'm a big lover of films. Donnie Darko is my favorite film. Really like Brazil, Pan's Labyrinth, Dread, Fifth Element, Akira, Ghost in
Yes.
the Shell,
Yeah.
Evangelion. Like loads. So there's a lot of indie films, like
Yeah.
British indie films, I really like as well.
Yeah,
But
I can definitely see an indie and narrative driven approach in most of those um, films. I can definitely see where you're going with this, with games
it's what
and
I really enjoy. I don't actually think of myself as a very good writer, so I probably shouldn't like cite too many references to that. But it's what I enjoy consuming. So yeah, hopefully someone else will get some enjoyment out of my work in that regard as well.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I will. Well, there's this one last question, and I am going to ask this question to every guest who comes to this show. So you're going to be the first one to answer this. And this
Cool.
could be a brief answer or a short answer or a long answer. It's up to you. Nath, do you think game development is easy or not?
Um, uh, yeah, I think it's long.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say it's easy or hard, but I would say it's long. And I think if you're someone who's able to commit to stuff long term, then you'll get on all right with it.
So it's not long, sorry, it's not hard or it's not easy. It just takes time.
It takes time.
And
Yeah,
that's what I would imagine too. Just gotta be patient with everything. I think I've been trying to get back to art, and that's I believe what I came to as conclusion. Just gotta be patient. But yeah, that's actually a pretty
definitely.
common sense answer. Thank you for that. Well, Nate, that was it with me. Could you tell the listeners where they can find you? How can they find Hollowbody?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm Nath, Headware Games. That's headwear spelt like software, but with head in front of it. Software for your head. I'm on socials, Twitter, TikTok. I don't really post on there. I'm on Threads. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Mastodon. I'm on all of them, and it's always Headwear Games as one word. That's my handle. Follow me on any of them. Go to headwaregames.com/subscribe, and you can subscribe to my mailing list, which is probably the best thing to do because then you'll get emails about my games. I don't spam it. I just occasionally send out an email if I've got a demo or a game launching soon. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, perfect. Well, yeah, I will also put these in the description and on the video itself, so listeners can see and go check out Hollowbody and your and the rest of your catalog. Well, Nate, thank you so much for joining the first episode of Game Dev is Not Easy. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's been great to properly chat to you finally as well. Really enjoyed
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think this is the first time we're chatting, right?
Yeah, yeah, like
Actually, yeah.
chatting voice wise, like rather than just text. But yeah,
Well, hopefully there will be another episode with you after all about it.
yeah, yeah. Fingers crossed.
All right, man. Well, thank you again, and I'll see you later.
Thanks so much, man.
And that was it, folks. Thank you for tuning in and listening to me and Nath about game development. I hope you enjoyed this. My current plan is to make at least one episode every month, but if it does well and I see that people are liking it, then I might consider doing it more frequently, maybe twice a month or 3 times a month. I'll see how it goes. I just hope that you enjoyed this first one. If you have any feedback, I am all ears. Please leave a comment below or reach out from DMs. And if you're a game developer and would like to join the podcast at some point, just send me a DM and we'll talk. Well, and that's pretty much it. Please leave a like if you liked the video and subscribe if you haven't. And remember to check the description for Nate's links and check out Hollowbody. It's a really cool game that's coming pretty soon, I think. And that's pretty much it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one.